All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone, and thanks for attending this webinar on designing sheet metal components directly in a browser. So my name is Casey Colligan. I'm a product manager here at CAD Dimensions. I've also included my email address up there. I'll have it on the last slide as well. So if you have any follow-up questions after today's session, certainly don't hesitate to reach out to me. So again, today we're going to be talking about designing sheet metal components directly in a browser and what specific tool we can now use to do that. Before we jump into what the tool is in the bulk of today's session, what I wanted to start with is to get a gauge and understanding of where everyone's kind of coming from, where their background is. What we're going to take a look at today is a new tool that we have now in the 3D Experience platform, which is called the 3D SheetMetal Creator. So the 3D SheetMetal Creator is a new role. We'll talk about what that means. That is on our 3D Experience platform. So just to give a quick introduction into what this role does. The 3D Sheet Metal Creator role, it is a tool that allows us to create production-ready sheet metal designs directly in a web browser. It allows us to design sheet metal because we're in a web browser from anywhere, anytime, on any device. So one of the values to the 3D Sheet Metal Creator is we don't have to have a local install like we would with SolidWorks desktop installation to use sheet metal. I can access these tools from any device, and we'll jump into what that looks like here. The 3D Sheet Metal Creator comes with an application called our X Sheet Metal app, which I'll show in just a second here. And what that specific application is really refined, simplified tool focused on the sheet metal design. So instead of having a full CAD platform with everything and lots of tools, we've got an application specific just for this type of role, just for 3D sheet metal creation. And then another thing with the 3D Sheet Metal Creator role is it is fully integrated on the 3D Experience platform. So what we'll see with that is the ability to easily navigate on the platform, utilize all the other tools available on the 3D Experience platform, and collaborate and manage that information. So with the 3D Sheet Metal Creator role, I did want to highlight 3 key points today, and then go over a demonstration of where the value is in these 3 areas. So the first one I want to touch on is design. So the ability to use the 3D Sheet Metal Creator role to do your sheet metal designs, right? Being able to actually create the sheet metal like many of you do inside of SolidWorks on this browser-based solution. Then the ability to collaborate on that platform. So in the 3D Experience platform, be able to take our sheet metal designs and actually collaborate on that with our coworkers, our vendors, whoever's on our platform, be able to communicate changes on that those designs as we're progressing them forward. And then the last one that I want to focus on today is then being able to manage that data. So not only creates the solid sheet metal geometry, but then be able to manage that in a couple different ways. And we'll take a look at that at the end. Before I go any further, also I do want to just mention, if you do have any questions while I'm going, absolutely feel free to throw those in the questions section in the GoToWebinar panel. What I'll do is we'll have some Q&A time at the end. I'll go through and answer those questions. So if you have a question, you're thinking of it as I'm going over some of these key points, just throw that in the question section and I'll address that at the end. All right, so the first key point I want to touch on is the actual design. So how do we use the 3D sheet metal creator role on the 3D Experience platform? So it is again, a browser-based application. So we will need to start by going to the 3D Experience webpage and using our login credentials to access this. So I'll go ahead and log into my 3D Experience platform. And what this will do is it's going to launch our dashboards. So in this case, I've got a custom dashboard set up for today's demo. Dashboard lets us organize the information that we see. What we're going to focus on today primarily is our 3D sheet metal creator role, which comes with that X sheet metal app. I already have that X sheet metal app open on my screen. To start off, kind of similar to SolidWorks, we can do a new component, we can open, we can import, or we can grab a recent file. I'm going to start off with this compressor enclosure assembly file that was designed inside of SolidWorks. I've placed it on my 3D Experience platform, and now I'm going to build a sheet metal enclosure around it. So I've got this full SolidWorks assembly with a bunch of different components in it, some tubing connecting my components. What we'll start off with is designing a sheet metal part. So I'm inside of an assembly. What I can do on the X sheet metal app is I can add a new component and give that a name kind of similar to designing a part inside of an assembly in SolidWorks. And I'm going to go ahead and just place that at the origin, give it a name so that I can remember. This would just be my sheet metal enclosure. If we take a look at the design manager on the left here, and we can see I'm now working on this sheet metal enclosure part. And I'll start off by creating a sketch. Very similar workflow to SolidWorks, like many of you are SolidWorks users. I'll start by creating a sketch on a surface here. We've got a full toolbar of all of our sketch commands, exact same icons you see in SolidWorks. I'm just going to start off with a couple simple lines here. Right, so I'll draw a couple of lines. Something that's unique to the X apps on the platform is when we select an entity, it does automatically give us a predefined dimension that we can quickly edit. So it's a really quick, sort of efficient way to do our dimensioning. I've got my first sketch completely fully defined. Now what I can do is jump over to my sheet metal tab. We've got all our sheet metal commands over here. When I'm doing my first sheet metal command, just like inside of SolidWorks sheet metal, the first command you will define the parameters for your sheet metal for each feature after that. So your thickness, bend radius, K factor, and relief. For this example, I'll just use a square relief of 2 millimeter by 2 millimeters. And then I'm just doing a simple extrusion here. So I'm going to specify my sketch and define my depth here. We get very similar end conditions to SolidWorks sheet metal. So I'm going to do an up to plane or up to surface. That's going to, again, give me that design intent. So if I update that feature that's driving this, it'll change that and then apply my thickness to the outside. All right, so just like that, in a couple quick clicks, I've already got a sheet metal part designed on a browser. I didn't have to install anything to do any of the sheet metal design. We also get some different view options. So I'm going to jump over to an ISO view to get a better idea of my design. Now, one of the cool things inside of the X sheet metal app is our selection pop-up on the right is very context sensitive. So what we select, we get a menu for. In this case, I picked an edge, so it's giving me some edge options for sheet metal. In this case, I'm going to choose a wall on edge command, which is our edge flange in SolidWorks. Now I can specify a depth, and for this example, I'll even add an offset. I'm going to offset this outside 6 millimeters from the that sort of base plate of my part. Again, if I want to add another edge flange, a quick way to access that, select the edge and get my wall on edge command. And again, I can set my depth or my height. We can also do limiting geometry where we can add offsets on either side. And we can drag those by the endpoints. So you can type in a specific value, or you can actually drag by an endpoint. Gives us a little bit more of that dynamic updating feel. And again, I'll add an offset. This time I'm going to add an offset of 4 millimeters. And if you noticed as I went in at the beginning, my thickness was 2 millimeters. So with an offset of 6 and an offset of 4, what we notice here, if I zoom in a little bit, is that I do actually have now touching faces. So in X sheet metal, we can have touching faces. It will still know how to unfold that at the end. We don't need a small gap in between those. If I missed something, so for that example, I actually wanted that on both sides. Just like SolidWorks, we can go into our design manager, edit a feature, and I can pick up another feature like that backside edge. Now I've got that wall edge on both sides. At any point in time, just like inside SolidWorks sheet metal, we can always flatten to get an idea of what our flat pattern is going to look like as we're working. Just left or right click on a face and flatten. The next step I want to do is I'm going to add a little tab to the top. So I can sketch my profile. I'm going to start it on that top face. And just like SolidWorks, I can drag back to that endpoint to get my tangent arc. I'm just going to add a little tab here, maybe throw a circle in the middle to give it a hole. And then a couple quick dimensions to define this, maybe some sketch relation, align it to my origin so this is centered. We'll add a few dimensions here to lock this shape down. Make this one 25 also. And I'll align my endpoints horizontal because I missed that when I clicked through. So now what I can do is exit my sketch, and here's a really cool thing. I can actually start a brand new on edge, wall on edge, but rather than specifying the edge as my profile, I can pick the sketch. So now it just takes that edge and it utilizes the sketch. I can define which direction my thickness goes. I want it applied so that way the top is flush with my top face. Utilizing some other sheet metal commands like we'd have inside of SolidWorks, you can do things like a chamfer. The nice thing in X sheet metal is a box select's a quick way to grab those edges. I can add a nice little chamfer to break those edges. Now let's say I want to add in some type of vents on the back for some airflow. I can just start off just like we were doing inside of SolidWorks. It's simple little, maybe a slot cut. You can kind of see as I add this in here an idea of what I'm going to be doing next. I'm going to be positioning this in a specific location. So that way I only have to sketch one, and then I can leverage patterns to capture the rest. I'm just going to position my first profile here for my cut and just do a normal cut. Because we are working in sheet metal, we do have the option to link our extrude depth or our cut depth to our thickness. So that way it only cuts through one material thickness. Then I can just simply add a rectangular pattern or a linear pattern as we call it in SolidWorks. I can grab my cutout feature, select an edge reference for my first direction, select an edge reference for my second direction, or a plane or an axis, my reference. And I'll throw maybe 5 of these going down. That looks pretty good. It's okay. Now I've got some ventilation on my the end of my sheet metal part here. Now I'm pretty much done with my design. So I want to mirror this over because I only modeled half of it. And what's really neat with X sheet metal is when we actually do a mirror body, if it sees there's only one body in there, it's going to automatically select it. So I didn't have to actually pick it in the graphics area, it just picked it up. There's some intelligence in this tool here. Now the last feature that I want to add here is I'm going to add a little hole up in this corner here. So I'll start off by just sketching a simple circle, and we'll add in a couple dimensions, maybe a diameter, and a couple locating dimensions to the edges here. Go maybe 15 by 25 to lock this into place. Now, what's really cool inside of our X sheet metal applications, we have this thing called a design assistant, which is a machine learning tool. In this case, when we're sketching, it's called the sketch helper. What this machine learning tool does is it takes a look at our geometry and what we've sketched, and it actually calculates what it thinks we might want to do. So when I click on this button here, we'll see it actually calculated or assumes, based on where I place that hole in my geometry, that I want to place 4 other holes in very specific positions, which in this case is exactly where I wanted to put all those other holes. We do get some visibility that shows us basically where the robot references an axis for that positioning. Then we get some options like symmetry. So in this case, the 2 on the left were calculated by symmetry. But watch what happens when I say okay. It actually just created those 3 other sketches for me. I didn't have to do maybe a linear pattern down or sketch 2 down and then do a mirror entities across. This machine learning inside of this application actually sees what it thinks I would want to do. Now what I can do is go ahead and simply cut those out, specify my direction, say okay. That looks pretty good, but I actually wanted to cut it all the way through, and I only cut the first plate. So again, just go back to your design manager, edit, and I'm just going to make sure that in my other direction, I'm going up to last as well. Cut through all both sides, and we'll say okay to that. So that again, then we can go ahead and flatten this. Take a look at my flat pattern. Maybe I'll look from my top view. And here I notice I've got some sharp corners. So just like inside of SolidWorks sheet metal, we have the ability in our X sheet metal app to do corner reliefs. So I can go back to my sheet metal commands, grab my corner relief. I want to add a circular, and I can just select all. It will find all my corners and automatically add the relief. I'm just going to keep it at my defaults, 10 millimeters for my size. And then I'll just verify my flat pattern, and that looks pretty good there. I've got my nice circular reliefs. So again, just jumping back to that, those cut holes that I added again, that's called the design assistant in the X apps on the 3D Experience platform, and it uses machine learning. So initially, when you first get in, it has some ideas based on geometry, symmetry, and what it looks like you're trying to create. But the more that you use these tools, the more that it learns your habits, and that tool will try to predict what it thinks you want to do, whether it's repeating that sketch like I did there, or repeating something like a feature. So it's really cool, the built-in machine learning inside of this application. So again, this is called our X sheet metal app with the 3D sheet metal creator role. So that's key point number 1. If I jump back to my PowerPoint, the next key point that I wanted to highlight today is the ability to collaborate with sheet metal. With that 3D sheet metal creator role and that design that I just built, I want to now use that information and communicate that to my coworkers. So when we're working with sheet metal, oftentimes what we like to maybe communicate on or share is the flat pattern. And a great way to share that information between different applications and different devices is utilizing the standard format of our DXF. So in our X sheet metal app, we do have the ability to export to a DXF file format. So I've got my finished design here, or at least finished for now. What I want to do is I'm going to go down into my tools, and I'm just going to export as a DXF. And what I can do is save this either to my 3D drive, which is on the cloud, or I can store this somewhere local on my device. I'm going to save mine to a location on my 3D Drive app so we can see what we can do with it. So I'm going to jump over to a different tab here. This is my 3D Drive app, and there's that DXF I just created. What I can do is I can drag that file, which is right now stored on the cloud, into an app called my 3D Play. And now I can see it. The 3D Play app's also really handy for doing things like markups. So I can go into this, I can add some little marks on the DXF and say, add a little note, say, okay, we need to add some cutouts on these two sides here. Maybe we need some components to come through the side of the sheet metal, so we need to open up some space. And what I can do with that is I can now publish that to what we call a community. So I'm basically taking an image of what I just added with those markups and that note, and I'm going to post this to what we call a 3D Swim community on the 3D Experience platform. So give it a title and say publish. I get a nice little notification saying it's done. So if I switch over to a different tab on my platform, this is my communities tab. You see that that note that I just added with those markups is now posted into a community. Everyone inside of your organization can have access to the communities. You can define who can see what information in these communities. And now we can start to collaborate on this. So I can pretend that I wasn't the one who created this. I could tag myself and say, hey, can you add these cutouts? Or my coworker, I can tag him. He gets a notification, says that someone added this note and tagged you. Now I can reply to that. I can say, yep, I'm on it. I'm going to go make those changes to the sheet metal. I don't have to leave the platform to do this. I just jump right back to my X sheet metal app, and I can add a cutout on the sides there. And I'll just do a simple ellipse cutout as an example here. Just create a little circular cut and do a simple cutout. Because the note said to put that on both sides, I'm not going to link that to thickness. I'm going to do a through all or an up to last and apply that cut to both sides. So now I've made the change. Now I want to communicate that I've made that change back so everyone can visualize it. So I could do the same workflow, create out a DXF, or right from within my X sheet metal application, I have the ability to post right to that swim community. So under my tools, I can actually share this as just a static picture, basically take a screenshot, or the entire model itself. So that way my coworkers can rotate it around. In this case, I think a screenshot suffices for what I need to show because you can see the holes on both sides. And I'll just give this a nice title saying something like, I've added those cutouts, and we'll go ahead and publish this back to that same community. So it's all stored in my same feed. Now, if I jump back to my collaboration tab, there's that new image where now I can collaborate on with my coworkers. They can see the change, they can like it, they can add comments, and we can keep collaborating and building our design through these communities. So the ability to collaborate with this 3D Sheet Metal Creator role is really easy because it's all on this same platform. I can just jump between my collaboration tools, my viewer tools, my 3D drive where I saw the DXF file, and then back to my X Sheet Metal app to make the changes, never having to leave that environment, and it's all done again on a browser. So that's my key point number 2 for today. We jump back to PowerPoint. The last one that I wanted to mention in today's session is managing data. So how do we've got all of this information. I just created a sheet metal part. I also have that SolidWorks assembly on my 3D Experience platform, but how do I actually manage all of that information? Well, on the 3D Experience platform, we also have the ability to use data management tools. We've got a couple benefits to this. One being that it is cloud-based. So all my information I can access from anywhere with my login and an internet connection. So on my platform here, we take a look, I've set up a data management app or a tab on my my dashboard. I've thrown a couple simple data management applications that are used pretty regularly. The first one at the bottom is our 3D space. So this is basically the bucket where we can store all of our data on the cloud in a really secure cloud storage location that only we can access. So you can see there's my compressor assembly in there with all the parts inside of it, as well as our sheet metal part that I just designed. On the top half, I've added an app called our bookmark editor, which lets us organize our data to make it easy to view and see some of the statistics on it. So I just threw in my compressor assembly and my sheet metal enclosure that I just designed into this bookmark. So not only do we have a cloud storage, but we have full data management in the 3D experience. So I can do things like create revisions, set workflows and maturity states, store this in different locations, specify who's the owner of the product. We also have regular data management tools, things like reserving and unreserving documents, and updating our life cycle from whatever maturity state is in, progressing it forward, adding revisions to documents, adding branches. So it's a full data management tools available. So if we take a look at the collaboration, something like reserving a document or a file. So this lets me lock out that file. So I'm the current reservation owner, meaning that right now I'm the only one who can make changes to the file and save it back. My coworkers can still open the files and view them, but they can't make changes and save them back to this space on our 3D Experience platform. So with this file reserved, I can go in and make some changes. You know, let's say I had to modify the size of that cutout. I added that, that looks good. We'll go ahead and save those changes. And now, instead of going back to my data management tools, built right in, because it's that fully integrated solution, I can just go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to unreserve this file from here. So right from my SheetMetal app, I unreserved that file. Now, if I jump back to my bookmark editor, we'll see it still looks like I have it reserved. I just needs a quick refresh here to update the change. And now we can see it is unlocked again. And any of my coworkers can now see that it is currently unreserved, and they can go and see the changes I've made, reserve it themselves, and make further changes. So we do have the ability to do full data management all within the same browser, jumping back and forth from our SheetMetal app right into our data management tools. All right, so just to jump back and to kind of sum up what I covered today with the 3D SheetMetal Creator role, I just wanted to highlight some of those values I discussed at the beginning. So the 3D SheetMetal Creator role does give us the ability to create these complex sheet metal designs from anywhere, anytime, directly in a web browser. The word that comes to mind whenever I think of this solution is really mobility, right? So not only can I access this from anywhere, but it can also be on any device. I can pull this up on my cell phone if I want to. If I need to review, you know, maybe my colleague just made a change and he wants to get my feedback on the change, like those cutouts, I can pull it up on my cell phone, use my login, throw that community open, and I can see the changes made and add a comment right there. I don't need to be at my desk to collaborate and make these changes, which brings up my next point, the ability to communicate on those ideas, create any design changes and updates all within that one singular platform environment from that one web browser login. And then the last one here, again, is that last step, being able to take all that data and manage it, do your revisions, set up your workflows, and progress that file from an initial concept to preliminary design all the way through to a production ready file to then maybe send out your DXF to actually be manufactured at the end. And all of that is built in to our 3D sheet metal creator role on the 3D Experience platform. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump now into the Q&A section. As I mentioned, if you have questions, throw those into the questions section. And we'll take a look and see what questions we have in here. Let me just pop that open. So is 3D SheetMetal Creator available as a standalone app? Question is, so the artist and it's literally the only application I need. So the cool thing with the 3D experience is it is very specific role-based in that you only need to get access to the roles that you need when using it. So that's the nice thing. You don't have to have a full CAD package like SolidWorks. You could utilize just 3D Sheet Metal Creator. The base role, it's called the Collaborative Business Innovator. That gives you the tools like the communities and the viewer and some other applications. So that would come bundled with the 3D sheet metal because that gives you access, and then you'd put your sheet metal on top of it. So you'd get that kind of a majority of those tools that I showed minus the data management. Another question here, how do you load a model from SolidWorks into 3D Experience? So there's a couple different ways we can do this. There is one tool that I didn't dive into today called the SolidWorks connector, which basically is going to open up the space information. So when I was showing the 3D spaces, we can actually see all that information inside of SolidWorks. And what that lets you do is basically when you do a platform save, it's going to sync that up to the platform. So you can be working directly in SolidWorks and you have that nice connector that's just pushing your information back and forth. But it's that full data management suite. So you have all of those same tools, the ability to reserve and unreserve files right from within that application inside of SolidWorks. Let's see, next question down. We got a bunch of them coming in. This is awesome. So let me see, just did that one. So can you add bends into an imported flat pattern? So you can also, I didn't go over that functionality, but if you're familiar with, say, SolidWorks desktop sheet metal solution, there is the ability to insert bends. So I could add a sketch line on a flat pattern, for example, where I want a specific bend and bends about that. So yes, it does have the ability to insert bends. Next question, can two people work on 3D design at the same time if they only have remote access? So yes, that's definitely one of the values here of a web browser-based solutions. You can have multiple people logged in as long as you both have your own logins. You can both log in and be working on the same thing. You know, collaborating like I was showing there. One of you is making some changes to one thing while someone is making changes to the other, vice versa. With the data management side, those tools let you do the reservation, reserve, and unreserve, which just kind of prevents working over each other. So someone can make a change, save it, unreserve it, someone else can go and make a change, save it. But yes, you can both be working on the same files as long as you both have access. Next question down, how does one sign up or get more information on the 3D experience? So that's a great question, Nolan. What we can do is we'll follow up after this session with some additional information for anyone who's interested and kind of get you going on additional information outside of this. So I'll follow up with an email to you, Nolan. Next question down. Can we take measurements So we do have the ability to measure, as well as add dimensions like I showed in that example. Design tables, are they used in 3D Experience? That I actually don't know. Let me pull one up and we'll take a look so we can actually see this together. So let me jump back into my platform. We'll take a look at that one. While I'm getting that open, just looking at the last question in here. So I see question, are the 3D Experience tools built on the SOLIDWORKS platform or are they completely new tools? So with the connector for the data management, that's built into the SOLIDWORKS interface. The applications that I showed today are built by SOLIDWORKS, but they are in this new interface of being on a browser. So the SOLIDWORKS built the tools. That's why the terminologies, the interface, a lot of that looks very similar, but it's just built on a new interface rather than inside of SOLIDWORKS. It's just on the platform, again, with the exception of the connector that puts the data management tools in the task pane inside of SOLIDWORKS. Let's see, any other questions in here today? What I'll do with that design table, let me see if I can pull something up for you real quick here. We'll take a look at that. So I'm just loading back into my SheetMetal app. This looks like it's the last question here. How do we find the connector in SOLIDWORKS? Another question just popped in here. So that would be a platform role that you would need to purchase to be able to get the connector between SOLIDWORKS up to the platform. So if you're looking into the 3D Experience platform, we can talk more about that and how they integrate. But basically, once it gets installed, or once you get the connector, it's just an add-in inside of SOLIDWORKS that you can turn on, just like your other add-ins like Simulation and Toolbox and PDM and all of those. It's just an add-in you check on, and it will just load that application in. All right, so the first question was, do we have the ability to insert tables? I'm just gonna do a quick check here. I might follow up with that one if I can't find it right now. So we do have the ability to measure. I'm not seeing design tables right now, but I'll look into that one for you, everyone, and follow up on the ability to do design tables within here. As far as inserts bends, we can create bends between walls. So we do have those same types of tools, and I'll follow up with some additional information on those. So I've got the asker for each of those comments, so I'll make sure to follow up. All right, well, thanks everyone for attending. Like I said, I'll follow up with some additional information for those of you who've asked. And if you do have any follow-up questions for me, again, there's my name and email address. Feel free to reach out anytime with any 3D Experience or 3D SheetMetal Creator questions that you may have. Thanks for joining today, everyone.